Hello and welcome to Powder Blue Report, episode 3, going into week 3 against the Jags. Myself and Ash here to talk about a game that seemed like it was absolutely ages ago now, the Chiefs game from this time last week, obviously, and then obviously look forward and ahead to the Jags game, as we said. Unfortunately, we're not being joined by Robson from the Jags Across the Pond due to unforeseen circumstances. He's got a bit of a situation going on with some power outages, but nonetheless, we'll crack on and we will preview the Jags game after we've dissected this Chiefs loss and an unjust loss as it kind of was, and I'm sure we'll get into it as we kind of just been talking about just before we got on. But yeah, as I said, we are the Powder Blue Report, part of the Full 10 Yards Network. Obviously, Ash, first thing first, man, there's a lot of injury stuff to kind of wade through for this one. Obviously, starting at the top with the main man, and obviously on our little sheet that we've got to prep, the first word I've put is panic. Like, it's not been terrible news coming out of the building since it happened last week, and obviously afterwards the game directly. But obviously, Justin Herbert has got cracked rib cartilage. How are we kind of feeling about this? I'm kind of a tentative. It seems obviously like I say, it's not the worst news possible, but obviously it seems like it's going to hang around, and I just kind of want to see how it's going to affect him moving forward, really.
Yeah, so obviously when it first happened, I was like, no, like, and especially that drive kind of afterwards where he was so much pain. I was really, really worried at one point. I thought he might have, the worst case scenario would have been maybe a punctured lung or something like that could have happened. But obviously since then, they took him in for x-rays that night, I think. They came back negative. Then they had a CAT scan and, showed up the cartilage. So hopefully, obviously looking at the positive side, that he's going to play this weekend. And I actually think he will. I think the signs are pointing in the right direction, and it seems to me, just by people talking out of camp, coaches, players, it seems like this can be dealt with. It's not ideal, but then maybe to sort of combat this is game script. So make sure he's not doing 7-step drops. Make sure he's got maybe not an empty backfield, so he's got someone to chip someone if they come in. You don't want to Burrow situation where you're just getting hit 13 times.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that you game script, that you account for this injury. So if they, by all accounts, if they can put him with this padding that they reckon they've got, this painkillers, and that he can go out there and throw, then that's absolutely fine. And then it's just a case of making sure he doesn't get hit.
Yeah.
So that is the scenario we're at the moment. It's just not ideal prep after a game which, unfortunately, it feels like it was a bit of a dagger to the heart, like with losing the game and then this happened to Herbert.
Yeah, and obviously we'll come on to the other injuries that are kind of important as well. But yeah, I kind of trace it back all the way to last Thursday, coming out of the game. Well, in fact, no, before the end of the game, obviously the 2-play sequence that everyone's kind of talking about, the play that he quite easily have ran for the first down, but didn't, and just lobbed it away. And then obviously a 30-odd yard completion that he made down the field. I mean, I know looking at him, he was in a lot of pain, obviously between the two sequences, of that one that I was just referring to, and also the when it happened. He was obviously in a lot of pain, and obviously he was throwing and things like that, but he actually did manage to go out there and still throw the ball and things like that. So as much as, in game time, you've got adrenaline and things like that, he must have some ability, to be able to do that and not kind of completely total himself. Then obviously coming out of the press conference, Brandon Staley's talking fairly positively. Obviously, he doesn't have all the information at that point, so you've got to kind of take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt, because he's going to be positive. He's not going to say, Justin's out for the year, and kind of shock everyone without having all the information. But equally, he's not going to kind of go ahead and be super, super positive, which I kind of guess he did err on the side of. Coming out, obviously, over the past few days, it's been pretty positive. Like I said before, when I kind of opened it up, it's kind of day-to-day stuff. And, if it's day-to-day, I mean, it's cracked rib cartilage. It's not going to heal in 10 days, 17 days if you give him a week off, for this one. He kind of misses this. It's going to affect him probably at some sort of level the whole season. So if he's day-to-day, then he's probably going to play. Like you say, he's going to be wrapped up. He's going to have injections. And he's just going to have to manage it. I mean, it has been sort of said that it is just a pain tolerance thing. And he's obviously toughed it out to go out there after the injury happened against the Chiefs, and obviously it's going to be sore the next morning, probably on the Friday morning, probably really, really sore, and he's probably going to be like that. Like I say, at some level, it's probably going to aggravate every time he plays. But like you say, it's kind of molding the game plan around it, isn't it? And kind of maybe running a little bit more. I kind of thought that maybe it'd be a weekend to activate Isaiah Spiller and get him kind of catching some passes out the backfield if you can find a roster spot for him on the active roster, and just have kind of like more runners, more receivers, more short game, like you say. And as much as everyone's kind of going pretty mental at the minute about short game and things like that and average depth of target, it kind of might have to be like that for a couple of weeks until he kind of gets some kind of health back.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, couldn't agree more. It might even be that you start playing two in the backfield. Like there was some plays they were running, they had Eckler and Everett both in the backfield and things like that, where you maybe get McKitty involved as a decent blocker, and you do some clever things, maybe open the playbook up and use stuff that maybe you were hoping to use in games 14 and 15 and 16. You might have to break them up a bit early. Not saying you need to use all of them, but like you said, you got to make sure you're really careful with him for the next few weeks, especially while the injury's still raw. So I'm hoping that he'll be back fully fit, if I'm honest, after the bye, which would be about week 8. So you're talking about a 6 sort of week period, which sounds about right with what's first things came out. They were like, oh, obviously he can play with it, but it's not ideal to have that lingering around. So maybe fully healthy in about 6-7 weeks.
Yeah, like I say, I personally think it'll probably affect him the whole way. But we've had a little bit of insider information from Austin Eckler, who has kind of come out earlier in the week, and said that this happened before. He kind of got injured in the Carolina game in his rookie season, and he kind of played with this sort of thing. It wasn't really obvious. It wasn't as public as this injury has been. So, he came out against the Bucs the week after, and obviously some people on Chargers Twitter kind of dug this out, and I think he had like 290 yards and a touchdown or two against the Bucs in a game that we lost. But, if he's kind of been playing with this, and, it's kind of like what you say about all professional sports people. They play injured all the time at some level. They're never 100%. So, we hear Bosa saying it in particular that, he's always dinged up in some way or form. So, it's just bad that it's obviously in a big rivalry game that we lost narrowly. And obviously, the kind of star man gets an injury that's kind of got everyone kind of worried and nervous, I guess. But it's not just Herbert, obviously, as I kind of alluded to earlier. Obviously, we've got Lindsay, we've got Pipkins who've come out of this game as well. Obviously, Keenan's still not playing, Donald Parham's still not playing. So, kind of going back to what you said earlier on, you think Justin will play. I can kind of agree with you on that. I almost kind of think that he's, and this sounds ridiculous to say this, but he's almost like second most important to Lindsay, because I feel like we'll get onto this when we kind of get into the Chiefs game. I feel like when Lindsay went out in the second half, that's when Chris Jones and the pass rush of the Chiefs started having a bit more joy. And he's just so important to the operation up front that, like I say, he almost feels like the most important person in terms of our injury report this week.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that you really did notice his presence not being there in that second half. Chris Jones got home, and Herbert just didn't seem like he was quite himself as well, just with the pocket presence of everybody. And it was a big miss, really, Lindsay not being there. Hopefully, touch wood, I'm touching it now. They reckon that obviously this tendonitis in the knee, so they reckon it's going to be one of them ones where you might play 1 week, you might have to come out, you might be in next week. It's going to be really up and down roller coaster ride, I think, with Lindsay for the rest of the season. But hopefully, with that longer period of rest time, because obviously he must have been dealing with this before, so it's not like it's new. It's just an injury that's been lingering, and because it was a short week, he might have aggravated it. So maybe that was the case, that he's aggravated it on a short week, and now he's had longer to take off. Basically, he should be fine for the game, which I personally think that he will be fit again. I think that they might do it if they go up and if the defense is in control of the game, and we don't do a normal Chargers thing where it goes to the last play on the fourth all the time. They might bring him out maybe in the fourth if they're up by a couple of scores, and they can maybe play the run game, so they don't have to diagnose the protection so much. So Clapp can come in and play the run game a bit more simpler. So, it might be a case of, again, just managing managing his reps if we can throughout the season. If the game goes close, then obviously you won't be able to do that. But if the game seems like we're either completely out of it and we haven't had a great week, or we're so far ahead that it doesn't matter, then you can sort of limit his time frame, and especially in the short week. So I think we've got one more Thursday night game, I think so.
Yeah, like you say, it's just going to be about managing these guys, isn't it? And they're all day to day at the minute. Obviously, we talked about Herbert, we talked about Lindsley. Like I said, there's three other guys. There's Parham, there's Pipkins, and there's Keenan. They're all day to day. Just going back to what we've kind of both said, we both, and I'll agree with you again, I do think Lindsley will play because he's that important. And like you say, it's another ongoing issue. It's not, like you say, just cropped up in the past week. It's something that's obviously just been going on for quite a bit. For that reason, again, I think he'll play. What do you think in terms of like Keenan, Pipkins, and Parham? What was your kind of thoughts on those guys playing on Sunday?
I don't think Parham will play.
No, it all seems to have gone a bit quiet with him, doesn't it?
I think there might be a bit more complications with his hamstring. I just don't know if it's fully healing.
Yeah, there was this setback, wasn't there? They mentioned,
which kind of worries me a little bit with Keenan because of these hamstring injuries. They just seem to linger longer than everyone's like, oh, he'll be back in a couple of weeks, hamstring, and then 2 weeks goes by. No, he should be back next week, and then it goes into week 4, and everyone's still scratching their head, thinking, "I thought this was just a hamstring tweak. It wasn't a tear. It wasn't anything like that." So I am a little bit worried about Keenan. I have to say, I think Parham will be out. I think I don't know about Pipkins. Pipkins will be the game time decision. I think that will be the game time decision. I think that they might say that about Lindsley or someone else. It's game time decision, but I think in their heart of hearts they know Herbert and Lindsley will play. I think Pipkins will be the game time, and I think if I had to bet on it, I'd say Keenan's out another week and so Parham.
Yeah, I go along with a lot of that. I don't think Pipkins will play. I don't, because it seems a bit more of like an impact injury, and if it's like a foot sprain or something, I don't know if that heals in 10 days, if I'm honest.
Yeah,
and they, as much more than most fans, I think, trust Storm Norton more than a lot of people. So I feel like they can think, well, we've got Storm who we can chuck out there. Worst comes to worst, you've got Jamari Salyer, you've got Matt Filer, to be emergency tackles. And if Pipkins is 90%, they might dress him and say, if worst comes to worst, if Storm's getting absolutely beat up, because we'll talk about Jerome Walker and Josh Allen a little bit later on. If they're having their way like Max Crosby was in the Week 18 game last year, then at least you've got Pipkins out there and he can kind of continue his. I was explaining how Pipkins was playing to someone else yesterday, and I said he's been anonymous in the best way, and that's kind of the biggest compliment I think we can pay him at the minute.
Yeah,
and I would prefer him to just completely just continue that the whole season.
Yeah.
I'd agree. I don't think Parham will play. I don't think Keenan will play because, like you say, it's hamstring. It takes a little bit longer. Same with Parham, obviously, as well. But then, they won't want to kind of risk aggravating that, I don't think. But I don't think Pipkins will play. I think they'll roll with Storm for 1 week and see if, another week or so can do the trick for Trey, and we'll get him back out there in week 3 against the Texans. Week 4 against the Texans. Season's moving along way too quick. So with that in mind, just final on this injuries, then we've kind of dissected who we think will and won't play. Do you think we can get through the next game or two with these kind of injuries kind of bogging us down a little bit? Because it's not catastrophic levels, but it's kind of got long quite quickly, I feel, the injury list.
Yeah, I mean, if this was normally what the Chargers do, it's like out for the season IR, out for the season IR. Yeah. So I'm counting my lucky stars that it's just day to days and weeks to weeks, to be honest. And like you said, in the NFL, you can never take anything for granted. Like you said, 1 week, your team's on a roll. Like even like the Cowboys went into the season thinking, oh yeah, we've got a chance here, we'll win the East, and Dak's out for 8 weeks, and all of a sudden everyone's saying you're out, you're not even going to get in. It's done. So you can't count for anything in the NFL. It's one of them ones where you just got you hope for the best and you sort of like fearing the worst all at the same time. So I think that we'll get by. It's obviously maybe not going to be pretty. Everyone's like, they want to see Herbert sling the ball around. They want to. It might do. We play hard-nosed defense and run the ball better. That's maybe what we have to do for the next couple of weeks, just to see these weeks through and get a couple of our guys back. But I think that it's not it's not the end of the world with obviously the games that we've got, but we can't take them for granted because you've seen some upsets as well already. So if they're fit enough to play, then we play them 100%. But game script it the way that they know how to game script it. I mean, I still trust these coaches. I feel very confident in these coaches to be able to put these wins together and get us through some of this. Maybe this is the rough time that we have before I thought it might be after the bye and we start hot. So hopefully we still do. It's just obviously you want to start hot and play well at the same time. You don't want to sometimes feel like you're the team that's not playing well and winning, which maybe that's a good thing for a title hope. But obviously, as fans, you want to see like your team like absolutely going out, balling, dominating teams, and it might not be that way for the next couple of weeks, especially against the opponents that we've got. We were expecting wins, and hopefully we'll still get them, but we might have to grind them out more in a different way.
I do feel like that. I do feel like we'll have to grind these out. I was saying the same person I referenced earlier. I was saying I would take a 17-10 Chargers win on Sunday.
Sure.
With it being, kind of ugly and not the way that we want to win, but at the end of the day, the W is what counts. And, just to kind of maybe disagree with you slightly on what you've just said. At the end of the day, I don't want to peak in week 3 or week 4. I want to peak in week 14, week 15 and be rolling into the playoffs, really hot. So we'll kind of see how it kind of goes. But just the wins, just what we need. That's it. That's the be all and end all at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, you're a game back from the Chiefs now, and obviously the Bills are looking great, and you kind of want to kind of keep the pace with these guys, especially in the division with the Chiefs, and keep that distance between the Broncos and the Raiders and ourselves as we move through the season.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how the injuries kind of pan out. We'll get more information over the next couple of days, I guess. So we'll kind of see how that pans out.
Yeah.
But while we kind of put that to one side for a second, let's look back to this loss that we had in Arrowhead Stadium, 27-24. Obviously, there's some positives to take out of this, but obviously, ultimately, it was a loss for the Chargers in what was a tough game, a close game. But we've got a few things we can dissect here. But first of all, I'm going to kind of move our sheet around a little bit and start with the question that I've put about 3 spots down. In how did we lose this game? Like this was close, and we should have won. I think we're the better team at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, first half, I think it's one of the most complete performances I've seen, especially with Val Keenan there. We just seemed very composed. Everything was done really well, both sides of the ball. And then obviously went into halftime, came out, Lindsay wasn't there, and it kind of just started to break off brick by brick. And it was a complete. I wouldn't say the Chiefs played badly. I think that we just held them in check really well. But it was a really strange game where we kind of looked in control but never looked comfortable. And what the Chiefs are probably the best at in the entire league is if you don't capitalize on momentum, they eat you alive when they get theirs. Yeah. So that kind of what happened is the big moments, the execution moments where he had to have that catch, or he had to make that stop, or he had to make that pick, or it seemed to be all the key moments of the game where you think that's when the game can turn. It went the Chiefs' way, and that's probably why what Staley was talking about of this domination mindset is that you've got to execute, and when you execute, it breeds the confidence and the domination, and that's kind of what the Chiefs have got. And that's been bled through years and years with Andrew Reid and Mahomes. So that's kind of what we got to get to. I think personnel-wise and team-wise, we're the better team. If you look at it on the game script and how the game flowed, we were the better team. But mentally and just on them big moments where big teams, even you put it in football terms, like your Real Madrids and stuff like that, when they could be playing very, very badly, but they have got that mentality to win a game when it's not going well. Yeah. And we don't quite have that. We don't have that mentality where if we're not playing well, we don't normally win. So we have to play well. So it's one of them ones where you, like you said, you kind of look at the game, you think, don't really know how we lost that. But I think it's just basically that experience in them big crunch sort of points of the game where you look at it and think, if he had done that, or if that had happened, that was probably a completely different game.
Yeah, I agree. You're exactly right. It's that kind of champion mentality, isn't it? Where the Chiefs can kind of sit in the huddle, or in halftime, thinking, yeah, we're down, but we've been in bad situations before. We've won games like this before. They've got a lot of experience to kind of draw upon, and they can say, well, we've come out and we've won this all. The same team, obviously, but the same quarterback, the same coach, and a bunch of players who they've got there. Whereas, like you say, that only comes through experience, only comes through success, and the Chargers don't have that. It's kind of why I thought it was really important that we made the playoffs last year, just to kind of have that experience of, we have got over the hump in the regular season, and even if we got bounced in the first round, because we weren't at full health or because we weren't going to this playoffs in great form or something like that, you just get that experience of making the playoffs. And I thought it was going to be really important for Herbert and a bunch of other young players' development to kind of have that experience. But we don't have that yet. So we kind of, almost like you say, waiting to catch someone on an off day or, win the division this year. And then that sequence can then start. Like you say, that has been bred from years and years and years of success over the past decade or so, however long it has been since the Chiefs have kind of dominated this division. And they've got that kind of assuredness about them when they're in bad spots. Because as you said, first of all, I'll kind of just say, for like primetime games, I'm terrible. I can't really watch them because I start work too early the next day. And I tend to either watch them either next day or I watch them other recording the next evening or something like that. And I was watching it on Monday. So obviously we were all off, weren't we? And I was thinking, well, how did this happen? Oh, sorry, Saturday was when I watched it. How did this happen? Because we're first half, we're looking, like you say, completely in control. We probably could have gone for it on the fourth down or two. And if we got a touchdown off one of those drives, then that would have put us in a pretty dominant position. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the aggressiveness and things like that a bit later on. But, and then you're coming down later on in the game and you're thinking, this is still in our hands. It's still in control. And then obviously we have the back break, pick six. And like I say, some of those key moments, obviously I didn't watch it in real time or in the moment, but I don't really see an angle from Samuel's pick that you can overturn that.
Yeah.
Because as much as, it's pretty borderline, and he's definitely not clearly got his hand underneath it. It was given as an interception on the field, and you've got to then be able to turn it over. Conclusively, I don't really see how they can conclusively say that he didn't, because as much as there's that angle that everyone's, and I hate when people share stills to kind of prove a moving point on Twitter and the like, where the ball is kind of angled down in his hands. But I always feel like he has his left hand underneath it in the next, almost like the next point of the video.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I mean, it wasn't given, and that's just the end of that. But, there's other picks that could have gone for us and things like that, and other moments that could have gone, like the illegal contact on Bryce Callahan is an absolute outrageous decision. It's completely instigated by the tight end of the Chiefs, and obviously that's picked off, and that's a different game in the first half, and we might go and score, and then it is becoming this dominant kind of scoreline of what would it have been, 17-7 or something like that, wouldn't it? 17-3 or something like that. I can't remember, but it's a different game, as you say, and you only you need one of these to kind of fall for you where you do kind of put away. I know we've beaten the Chiefs recently, especially in Arrowhead, but I feel like we've got to get one of those where we beat them fairly comprehensively, and then it kind of might breed a bit of confidence and think, well, actually, we are the guys in this division now, and we are better than those guys over there. And as much as they've got the history, we can beat them and beat them well. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't have to come down to a 2-point conversion or something kind of a bit miraculous coming off in our favour.
Yeah. Yes. I thought you pointed out the interception, Tampa obviously had one as well that week, and it's literally identical, and it's you kind of, it does make you scratch your head, and it does wind you up as well when you're watching it as a fan, and because obviously you're thinking, and the same with the Bryce Callahan one, both of them two decisions came off picks, and then they got completely reversed the other way. And then, like you said, you had the other things where obviously Herbert had his pick, and then you had that block punt, which was like a fingertip, block kick, which was a fingertip away from the field goal, which that would have completely changed the game as well for us. There's so many things where Sante had an easy catch which he dropped, and there's a few other things that you can just look at where you think that should have been the game, and that's where they execute them the Chiefs, and it was just them little ones that kind of, because if I'm honest, we could have been that, what you're talking about, the dominating performance, it could have actually been
it was there, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was there for the taking, to be honest. You hold Mahomes to under 20 points, Kelsey was under 50 yards or 50 something yards, both their touchdowns were like outrageous. One came off the blitz, where obviously we've been banging on about not blitzing them, and then they did Justin Watson one over JC. If JC's
JC's coverage was good though. I don't really see there's much to the fault
might be that he might if he was just slightly rusty. And the thing, it was, I mean, the ball was outrageous for them. But it's them little things where you think that could have been a complete, and it's not even like a little, it could have been a completely different game. And we could have been sat here now saying the Chiefs won by 2 scores, the Chargers won by 2 scores. Because if Herbert had got that, if that wasn't a pick six, it's 7 points the other way. So all of a sudden we've won by 4. And then if one of them picks gave us a short fields, you're ending up winning by 10. So, like, I know everyone's a little bit down because obviously if the manner of obviously how it happened and Herbert's injury has made everyone a little bit like uneasy, but I'm still really like chuffed with how the team performed in that game. And it's just the annoying bits where you sit down, you think that's what we've got to work on. We've got to work on the concentration and the mentality of the team in these crunch games, because this whole team has got ability. Like this whole roster has got ability. Like you can see it through your very own eyes when you was watching the game, how well the Chargers did, especially in the first half. And even the Chiefs came back, and you could say they had the better second half. The Chargers, it still was there. They were even in the beginning of the third quarter. We marched down the field and got that TD. So it was there for the taking. And like, I think a lot of the Chiefs fans, if I'm honest, more so maybe than Chargers fans, a lot of the Chiefs fans are looking at that and actually a little bit more worried about us than they ever were before. So I think that they are more, because even though we've beaten the Chiefs in Arrowhead before on a 2-point conversion, we never looked this good. Like, and even though we lost, we never looked this good against them. Like they were lucky to come away with that win this time, and I think they know about it as well, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm sure he won't mind me kind of saying this on the pod, but Liam and I obviously exchanged a couple of texts, and he said on Friday, like, when you watch it, we got away with it. You know, he kind of was open about it, and he's pretty fair when it comes to his analysis of the Chiefs. And he did say that, you know, we kind of were the second best team. So kind of fair play to them. And it kind of just one positive to take from it, I guess, is the fact that we get to see him again, you know, in a few weeks, and we can kind of right this wrong, hopefully, and tie the series up. But like I say, there's some positives. Like the defense was like great, as you kind of said. They held Mahomes to 20 points, and obviously the winning touchdown is from a pick six. So, you know, the run defense is good as well. Like, I think I've got it on our sheet here that, you know, from 2 weeks, although it's small sample size and things like that, held the Raiders to 64 yards on the ground, the Chiefs to 93. So that's markedly better than last year, and the defense just looks good, like really, really good. Like you say, like they'll have 1, maybe 2 performances this season where absolutely everything goes for them. We end up with like 4 interceptions and so absolutely hammering some team because they just can't score on us. And obviously, we said we might have to lean on them this week because, you know, it's potentially a Herbert kind of hamstrung game, or we're playing Chase Daniel or something like that. So, like, but the defense is looking great, right? It's real step up from last year.
Yeah, real deal. This is the real deal, this defense. They've come in the first 2 weeks and they've really put up. So if they carry that on into the next few games, I'm not overly concerned about Herbert being fit or Allen being fit or Lindsay being fit, because if this D plays to what they've been capable of the first 2 weeks, then we should, in theory, be able to beat these just with our D. So obviously you've got to put up some points, but obviously I'm just... Like, if you're looking at it through purely the eyes of what this defense is now, they fill me with so much more confidence than I've ever had before in being able to. We've always kind of relied on this offense for ages and ages as a Chargers fans for quite a while, to be honest. And now to see a defense that on paper is now playing on the field as well as they do on paper is really refreshing, and it's kind of give you sort of like that belief that if it does become a bit hard on offense sometimes, our D's always there, and hopefully it continues for the next few weeks and they can kind of get us over this tough spot, because in theory most of our D's still out there. Touch wood, they stay out there.
that was getting some work.
Obviously, like, they're all out there still. Obviously, most of the injuries at the moment we're having is on offense. So fingers crossed that the boys can step up for us this weekend.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like, you know, like there's some players that are really like just playing to their maximum already. You know, these new guys, like Khalil's had a great start to the season. Bryce Callahan, is absolutely balling out. I just feel like there's a lot of players that are playing to a really, really high level, and some of it's going unnoticed. Kenneth Murray was decent again. Sebastian Joseph Day is obviously made, and Austin Johnson as well. We always kind of forget to mention Austin Johnson, but they've had like a big effect on things. And like you say, it's just kind of really about lowering the bar that the offense has got to clear. Because I know we were talking, and we were all incorrect in saying this last week with Liam. We were saying, each team needs to score 30 points because that's the bar that the opposition offense sets. The bar's not that high this week, and it shouldn't be. And the defense can lower that bar to 14, 13 points maybe. So that's what the offense has got to shoot for. They've got to get a couple of touchdowns, maybe a field goal as well, and we should win the game because that's what the D's kind of enabling us to kind of aim for. So it's really positive. It's kind of complementary football again that we've kind of all preached about, and the coaches have preached about, and everyone kind of wants is that when your offense isn't performing very well, then the defense can get them out of a hole, or it's just kind of all working together. So it's going to kind of have to be at different points in the season, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
On offense, then obviously I kind of alluded to it before. The aggression wasn't there. I really did feel, and I wasn't watching it in the moment, but I really did feel that we could have gone for a couple of these kind of 4th and 2 in the middle of midfield kind of thing. And I feel like last year we would have gone for it. And obviously Staley kind of preached that you need to score touchdowns against the Chiefs to win. And that obviously ultimately proved to be true. And, we won games because of that. We lost games because of it as well. You could argue. But, we beat the Chiefs. They were one of the games that we won last year in Arrowhead because we went for it on 4th down. We got a couple of games like that. What's your kind of take on that sort of thing? And in terms of like the 4th down, I mean, we've got to mention that we were 4 for 4 on 4th down because of a couple of late ones. But how does it feel so different this year in terms of 4th down and the aggressiveness that we kind of seem to have gone away from a little bit?
Maybe it's the nervousness of. I was thinking about this the other day. It's a nervousness of they know that they might have a chance of winning the whole thing this year. So it kind of it's like a mentality blockade where you think we don't want to mess this up more so than before. Like in the last few seasons, it's more like this sort of like lethargic attitude is let's just go for it. Let's just let's have
nothing to lose sort of thing.
Yeah. Whereas maybe they're like we really don't want to lose to the Chiefs if we go for 4th here. That gives them a short field, and because they're actually thinking, hang on a minute, we've never been in a better position ever to win the AFC West and knock the Chiefs off the top spot. It might just be as simple as this gut feeling of anxiety from these coaches that maybe they maybe need to get over or whatever. That they're actually not doubting themselves, but they're doubting the flow of the game. Whereas maybe before when we were going for these 4th, we needed the momentum to change. Maybe the D wasn't. But at the moment, it's especially in the Chiefs game, we had them on the ropes and maybe they thought, I don't want to not get a 4th and goal to then give them the momentum rather than if we punt, it doesn't really change the momentum of the game if we just punt. Whereas if they stop us on a 4th, it flips the crowd and then it gets their momentum. So maybe it was just that sort of way of thinking as we don't want to give them this momentum swing. And in fact, it maybe backfired on us a little bit where it didn't give us the momentum to carry on and stick the knife in. So it's one of them ones that they might learn from. It might have been ones where it's just game plan dependent against maybe the big teams in the bigger moments and they maybe didn't want to give too much away. But yeah, it was one of them ones where you did see that maybe sometimes where they didn't want to give the Chiefs that momentum and maybe by punting, that stopped that happening.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's a really good point about the crowd, I thought, because that's something that really came across on the broadcast that for Arrowhead, it was super quiet.
The first half
it didn't seem like they had a lot of energy in the crowd, and I thought that was due to the Chargers' good play really and how they were playing them. And like you say, it kind of gives the opportunity for the energy to get back into the crowd, doesn't it? If they stop us on 4th. And then, like you say, the momentum flips and they go down the field and score, and then they can score at any time. So then it's equal, or they're beating you when, like you say, you have them on the rope. So it's kind of maybe not something to overreact to at this juncture. I think after two games, maybe if we don't see it after up to the bye, maybe then you can maybe think, well, why has this mentality changed? But I can kind of see the both sides of the coin on this one. I can see that the fact that the defense is playing well. J.K. Scott's punting well because again I thought he punted pretty well again on Thursday last week.
Mm-hmm.
You can pin them back and you can give your defense some opportunities to get the football back. Yeah, I can see that. But then obviously you can see the side of the coin of if they do start midfield, then do you have your confidence in your defense to kind of hold them to 3 or get the ball back even from that kind of short field? So it's difficult. It's kind of one of those. It's probably going to be horses for courses, isn't it, throughout the season? Yeah. In the fact that if we do really need that win, then we'll start going for it again. And that kind of nothing to lose mentality might come back. But like you say, when you've got them on the ropes and you're in a game that you're looking like you probably should win anyway, even though it's an Arrowhead away, against the Chiefs, then maybe you're still fine to not go for it. I think there's a tendency these days to kind of want an instant reaction to everything, isn't there? And I think as much as I kind of wanted to discuss it, I don't think it's actually worth reacting to at the minute. It's kind of contradictory, but with such a small sample size of the season, you can't really say it's one way or the other. I think it was just because it was so in your face. And it was like every game, it's like, yeah, we're going for it. Yeah, we're going for it. It's like, this is like an identity of the team. And it just seems like because we've not done that so far too much, then it's kind of changed. But it might not have done. I'm sure they'll still want to kind of go for it. You can't stand up there on the stage, on the Chargers social media program that they've got, episode 1, talking about dominating mentality, and then just be like, nah, we'll just keep punting the whole season. It just doesn't marry up. And with how much tension is on these things from fans, then it just won't wash. People start to lose faith, and I don't think anyone's in that position. But over the long term, I think it potentially could go that way if he doesn't kind of just continue to do it a little bit. At least like to some degree that it's like, oh yeah, he still goes for it more than most. Maybe not to the degree that he did last year, but yeah, it's definitely got to be a mentality of the team and an identity of the team, I think, moving forward.
Yeah, I think that, and I think they will do. I think it just the game sort of. I could understand it sometimes when they did punt, and I know that everyone will point to that one where it was really 4th and short, and then they punted down, and they put them within their own. I think it was their own 15 or something in the end. But I did feel at that point that. I didn't feel like we needed to go for it at that point. So maybe the coaches felt what I was feeling because the crowd were low. Everyone, like, it was really quiet. We were up. Like, it just seemed to be like, we don't need to go for 4th here because it doesn't feel like we need to go for 4th because if they stop us, the crowd will flip. If we punt, the crowd are still low and they've got to drive 80 yards. So that one in particular that everyone keeps talking about, it didn't feel to me like, I know everyone keeps going, oh, we should have gone for it. The analytics say we should have gone for it or whatever. But in the game moment, it actually didn't feel that way because of how the crowd were and how tight everything was, but we were still the better team. And maybe Staley was just looking like, hey, are these balling at the moment? Like, I'd rather give them 80 yards to play with than 40.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Like I said, I felt like that, but I wasn't watching it live, so I'm probably not the best person to kind of speak about this. But yeah, like I say, it's a fair point with regards to the crowd and all that sort of stuff. It's definitely a part of it that's intangible. It doesn't. The analytics don't pick that up. It doesn't pick up that kind of feel. So it's one of those things, isn't it, where you kind of get that age-old debate between analytics and everything else. I guess the other kind of talking point that everyone on Chargers Twitter is talking about is Joe Lombardi in the offense. Obviously, it dates back to last season. Do you kind of think, I'll just kind of plainly ask, do you think he's as big of a problem as Twitter's making out?
No. We could have.
I'm glad we cleared that up.
We could have Matt Patricia and Joe Judge. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's stop whinging about it. Like, I know, like, everyone's like, oh, yards per attempt and all this, like, air yards and all that malarkey. Like, hey, like, we're still looking good. Like, some things with teething problems. I said it last week in week 1. Like, there will still be teething problems for the first few weeks for some of these teams because the first couple of games, to be honest, I would say the first 3 games are like preseason because it's just so non-competitive for the preseasons that half your players don't start. And then you pick up some injuries, so it's never free flowing. So it takes you a good at least 3 or 4 games, if I'm honest, to get into the season and get sort of like how you can really address and see what these teams are all about. And I just think that it's been, and let's not forget, we played 2 massive divisional rival games. Like, he's not going to just be slinging verticals like left, right, and center. Like, it's like Madden. Like, come on, like, let's get the grips. And like I said, it could be a lot worse, man. We could be having. I said this to Stephen from the guilty as charged. I said we could have Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, and he was like, hell yeah, we could. So I don't know what everyone's pissed about. I was like, I know.
Yeah, it's like, we had a good offense last year. Like you say, I think it's a really good point that you make about preseason, especially for the first 3 weeks, because none of the starters are playing. And at the end of the day, like, the offense isn't just going to come out and show like the full menu, the whole, like, in week 1 and week 2, especially against divisional teams who you have to play again later in the year, especially at like a later stage of the year when it's going to be really important games. You're just not going to show the full menu, and people are going to work out some kinks. We've got some new players. I guess it just makes it look worse because one of your new players, DeAndre Carter's having like a great start to the season, whereas someone wanted to break out in Josh Palmer has started a little bit slowly. Although I just think he's been the same as last year. I just don't think we've seen that like jump that everyone wanted to. I just think he's kind of been the same in a maybe in a more expanded role. They'll work out the kinks. They're going to be in the film room. They're going to be on the training field. Every opportunity they can get working on the offense. And like I said, I think you make a great point again. Like, there's much worse out there. And as much as everyone kind of, again, looking elsewhere, the grass isn't always greener, despite Tua throwing for 400 yards, to 2 insanely fast receivers, and everyone wants really fast receivers. And everyone kind of compares Tua to Herbert because they were picks 5 and 6 in the draft. And we've been able to lord it over Dolphins fans that they should have took Herbert, and we did. And now it feels like the boot's on the other foot, and people don't like it because they're doing it with speed, and that's what we kind of want, or a lot of the Chargers fan base kind of wants. It could be much worse, and I'm sure it'll flip round, and I'm sure we'll see some really potent offensive performances. It's just not come completely yet in the first and second week of the season against some divisional, some tough division opponents as well. Yeah. Like, they're no mugs, obviously. I know we kind of don't think that either the Raiders or the Chiefs have got as good a defense as we have, but they're no mugs. You know what I mean? They're not terrible defenses.
No, they're good. I think they're pretty good defenses, to be honest. Like, they're not, like you said, they've got their downfalls. But remember, like, we've basically had to play 1.5 of these games without our best wide receiver. So if you think about the playbook, I wouldn't, maybe not half the playbook, but a lot of that playbook's gone.
Yeah,
because you haven't got Keenan Allen to run the route that you know that he's going to get. So you've lost, and then if you lose Lindsay for half a game, the playbook gets cut again. So because Clapp doesn't know everything that Lindsay knows, he doesn't know the protections. He does, so you're going to have to make it easier for him. So you might say, "Oh, Lombardi's more conservative." He's going to have to be, because we haven't got Keenan Allen out there running his routes and getting everyone else open. Everyone's marked up because they haven't got to worry about Keenan Allen. Parham's not out there. He's 6'9". You haven't got to worry about 6'9". But so some of your playbook's missing because Parham's not out there. Lindsay's not out there. Some of your playbook for pass protections can't be used because Lindsay's not out there. You lose your right tackle, then some of that. So it's not just because of
Joel
Lombardi being Lombardi. It's because he's had to do that because we haven't got half of these players that would normally use in all this. Oh, we can play this and we can do that and we can go long to Guyton. We can't go long to Guyton if you've got to ask him to do short dig routes, and do you know what I mean? You can't ask him to do all this stuff if you haven't got some of your big key contributors to open up the expanse of the playbook. So he's done exactly what I thought he would have done. And if I'm honest, the Chargers could easily be 2-0. We could have beaten the Chiefs, and everyone could be ranting and raving, saying, "Oh, look how good we look," and everything like that. And this Lombardi thing would not even be news. It's just people just looking at something else to just neg out on. And if I'm honest, you can't help it. You've had Herbert's been injured, Lindsay's been injured, Allen's been injured. It's like, what? I don't know what you want him to do. Like, you can't just go out and go, "Oh yeah, can we get Waddle off you now? Can we get Pitt?" Like, the players aren't out there for free agency to go and bring these superstars in. You've got what you've got. This is what we've got. Yards after catch with Everett, screens with Eckler, some big plays to Mike now and again. But at the end of the day, until Allen's back out there, you won't probably see this high expense offense that you want to see until we get Keenan back out there, personally.
Yeah, I think that's really fair, mate. The sky's not falling. It's never as bad as what people would kind of make out. It's sometimes not as good as what people would make out either, and it's sometimes always something in the middle. But at the end of the day, like you say, we're in a decent position. We would have all taken 1-1 at the start of the season. There's some things to go around that, some context to go around that makes it worse, but people generally do want something to blame after a loss, and he seems to be just what the scapegoat is. Unfortunately, that's the kind of way it is on social media, and kind of people being emotional after the games and being able to fire off an emotional response in 2 seconds on Twitter. It's never the most controlled environment, I guess. No. So just lastly, kind of to wrap up this, kind of look back at the Chiefs game before we quickly go into the Jags game for next Sunday. We mentioned in our AFC preview, our AFC roundtable, we mentioned it with Liam last week, mentioned about tiers in the AFC. Is it still a 2-tier thing, or the Chiefs still, because we talked about this championship mentality, have they still got that little edge? And would you put them in a different tier and we're second tier and the other two are kind of behind, or is it still 2 and 2? Who'd you say?
I would still say it's 2 and 2, but I'm probably biased. But you would say I'm not afraid to say that obviously the Chiefs are 1A, but we're 1B. I think that we are in the same tier. Fair. I think if you watch the game, you can't say that they completely bossed us. They just seized the moment of their big opportunities, and they didn't play horrendously bad. They had some non-Chief moments, shall we say, where you did scratch your head thinking Chiefs normally wouldn't have done that, and I think that they would. In some ways, they were just as scared of us as we were of them, because I think that they realised, fuck me, this is a good team. And we will be seeing them a lot in the next few years. So it was one of them ones where I do still think that, the Chiefs are the team to beat, and they should be, because they've got arguably one of the best, if not the best coach at the moment. And then they've got one of the best quarterbacks at the moment. And they've got a really good bloody roster. They've drafted well the last few years. Obviously, they've lost a few players, but they must be looking over their shoulder thinking, well, we really wish we didn't have these lot chasing us down. Yeah, so I think it's still the same. I think we are in the same tier, because I think that they were a lot more scared than they thought they'd be against us when we played against them this week. I think that even though we lost and we've beaten them before with probably worse teams, you could tell that we were matching them stride for stride, more so than we rode our luck really in the past, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty fair. I think we're pretty much on an equal footing. But yeah, let's consign that to the past. Obviously, we can look forward to meeting them again in LA in a few weeks' time, as I mentioned. But let's look ahead quickly to the Jags game. What we'll say, obviously, Robson wasn't able to join us tonight, as mentioned earlier, but still go ahead and give them a follow at Jaguars GB if you are wanting some Jags content. Maybe we'll get a little roundup from him at some point after the fight, after the game, or something like that. But yeah, go and follow those guys, part of the Full 10 Yards Network as well. Let's get into this then. So with regards to the Jags game, obviously they seem like a different animal compared to last year. I mean, how couldn't they? Because it was a farce last year, really, wasn't it, under Urban Meyer? Doug Pederson's got them playing pretty well. They've had one reasonable game where they played okay but lost to the Commanders, and then they've had one game where they've played pretty well. Actually, I was actually pretty impressed with them on Sunday when I watched that game in the early slot. Against the Colts team that's got some problems. The offensive line didn't show up. Matt Ryan wasn't great, but they shut them out, and they're a division rival. They played pretty well, so give them their dues. This is a different sort of test, isn't it, to what we've faced previously with the Jags, in the last few years when we've played them, when they've been pretty bottom feedery, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say so. I think that what we don't want to do is, obviously they've just caught the wave now of, obviously, that win over the Colts is going to massively lift their spirits. So obviously we're on the down, because obviously everyone's a bit down because obviously they lost to the Chiefs, and they're on the up because they shut out the Colts. So what we don't want to do is, we don't want them to start well and then continue to ride that wave of confidence, because I think that like you said, they've got some good pieces. I think on offense they're spreading the ball around really well. It's not tunnel vision, or the game script's not going towards. I know Kirk's been used a lot, but he's been used a lot in the slot. So quietly confident that Callahan might be able to lock him up for a little bit, and then all of a sudden, then you've got the Jones brothers outside with Zay and Marvin, and I think that. They haven't come up against the D like ours yet. So
yeah,
obviously the Colts were missing Darius Leonard, which is the heartbeat of their team, basically, especially on D. And their D was pretty woeful this weekend. Obviously they got no real pass rush anyway, so most of theirs has been run stop, and then their defensive backs have played very well over the last few seasons, but they have not come up against a team like us. And we've got to make sure we stamp our authority early in this game to make sure that they don't continue and ride the wave that they set themselves from the Colts game.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I watched them against. Well, I watched both games. I put out the little tweet thread over at Powderby Report on Twitter. Washington gave them some fits. They've got a good defensive line, but they didn't have Chase Young, and they still put Lawrence under a lot of pressure. Lawrence, in a kind of Patrick Mahomes kind of way, was kind of getting rid of it just before he was getting sacked on a few occasions. So I do think with like a good pass rush, like you say, I think we can kind of cause them some issues. Mm-hmm. They kind of had some procedural penalties and things like that. They had, I think, 13 penalties for 90 yards in the first game. That was obviously on the road in Washington. So, they cut it out at home because obviously it's easier at home to not have those penalties. But I feel like there's still some rustiness. There's still some new feel, like they're feeling things out with Doug Pederson and things like that. So I feel like we can essentially get at them in that way. Maybe it's going on the road as well, coming west and things like that. So we can kind of get them in that sort of sense. I don't feel like they're to be feared in any way. I mean, we'll come on to Lawrence and the offense and things like that and kind of how they do things. But like you say, they've not got anyone who I'm like, wow, he's better than all our players. You know what I mean? Like, or we would have that player playing for us. I don't think there's anyone really on their team who I would kind of say that about, but they're not like a pushover. Like going into some Jags games in the past, it's been like, yeah, we'll win this kind of easily. And we spoke about it previously. It was for a long time, like our most recent blowout win was against the Jags. It was about 3 years ago. Those are the sort of games that you'd get. But, I think this is a bit of a different test, and they've got some good players, especially up front. This is going to be a good game to kind of see, have we got Pipkins at full strength, or is Norton out there? We can kind of say that Rashawn Slater will be fine now. But, Matt Filer's not had the greatest start to the season. Is it going to be Will Clapp? Because, Josh Allen, Trevon Walker, their defensive lines had a pretty decent start to the season. Like I say, with some bad tackle play from the Colts, they put the Colts under a lot of pressure, and they've looked like they've got something going there with a young group up front.
Yeah, they do. I'm a big Josh Allen fan. I think he's great. And I think that this game will hinge quite a lot if they're able to establish the run just as much as, obviously, we talk about their passing game, but their running game is really important to them to establish everything with obviously Robinson and Etienne. So it seems to me that if we can, like you said, you get this crowd up, get everything, make it a hostile atmosphere, get all the Chargers fans up for this and make it as hard as we can, I think that it will be more of a case. I think it's probably more of a case of, for the Jags just to see where they are in regards to, are they, a lot of people will be like, oh, the Jags don't look as bad, but obviously they've come up against, at the moment, what looks like a very woeful Colts team and a very questionable Commanders team, shall we say. So
average,
but Chargers have done it before. They have lost to average. They have lost to teams that have been below average, and they've done that last year. So you can't take anything for granted in this league. But I think that if the Chargers play to anywhere close to their potential, even if it's like 80% of their potential, then they should see this game out. But it's one of them ones where you are interested to see what the Jags bring and then how we would combat it. But I still think that we've got more than enough firepower to keep them quiet.
Yeah, 100%. I'd go along with that. Like I say, I'm still expecting us to win. I'm still expecting us to not be fairly comfortable, but I don't want it to come down. I don't think it should come down to the last play of the game or last drive or anything like that, But I don't think it'll be a pushover, walkover either. But, we could quite easily win quite heavily. What I did spot was a couple of things. On offense for them, they use a lot of motion. They kind of try and confuse you. So linebackers got to be on their P's and Q's, I think, and just kind of a good eye discipline. I think getting Durbin close to the box, I think, could, like you say, stop the run being established and kind of, Kenneth Murray being on his game and the two defensive tackles that we talked about earlier on. If those guys are playing well and they're on it and then can basically put the ball in Trevor Lawrence's hands, and as much as that's decent, and we'll come on to Trevor Lawrence quickly in a minute, but again, like, they don't have any superstars at wide receiver. Like Marvin Jones is fine, but he's pretty old. Christian Kirk's playing well, but he's going to be matched up with Bryce Callahan. We've got the corners to deal with any of them anyway, so it doesn't really matter or worry me too much, like I say. But they've got to be disciplined, I think. I really think they've got to be disciplined. And kind of on offense for us, I noticed in the Commanders game in particular that Curtis Samuel and Antonio Gibson had a lot of joy out of the backfield with passes, and kind of little handoffs and things like that. I know it's something that Chargers have tried with Gerald Everett, and Austin Eckler's not had the greatest start of the year, so maybe it's a get-right game for him. And Isaiah Spiller, again, would be someone that potentially we're looking to activate because, for the injury stuff as mentioned before, but also because they seem to be a bit weak against it, So there's ways in which we can hurt them, I think, and, it's not kind of beyond our kind of capabilities, I don't think, either.
Yeah, I think it's a big Eckler game, to be honest. I think it is. Sneakily as well, I think it might be a Josh Palmer game. Everyone's doubted him over the last week with obviously Carter coming in, but I think it might be quite a sneaky game for Palmer. So, yeah, I think that, like you said, most of the things you've touched on really is making sure you limit them to. I think that we've got beat with a few big plays against the Chiefs again. So not obviously they weren't huge plays, but it was one of them ones where you could see that could sneak into maybe the Jags if they do play this run, big play over the top sort of play. With obviously you got Marvin Jones. He's not the quickest of guys, but he is great at jump balls. And then the same and Kirk. He's got the speed. And Zay Jones did it with the Raiders against us as well. So we have got to watch that. So it might be again, if you look at like Naz, really important to this game. Obviously the defensive tackle stuff in their run up, then maybe, like you said, you're squeezing them so much that they haven't really got much else to play with.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that they do try. They try to set up the play action game quite a lot, and that's where a lot of their deep shots come from what I saw. They had the huge completion to Christian Kirk, which I think set up one of their touchdowns against the Commanders as well. And I think they had a couple against the Colts on the weekend as well. So it's definitely something that we've got to be mindful of moving forward. But it's obviously kind of wrapping up Trevor Lawrence, isn't it? At the end of the day, I mean, he's come into the league, give him a kind of bye almost like from last year because of the situation that he was in. And, he's come in, he's not setting the world on light this season. He's got 275 and 235 yards in each game. But he's playing some pretty clean football. I think we're seeing a better Trevor Lawrence, in terms of compared to last year, certainly. And I feel like we're really starting to see the real Trevor Lawrence almost in terms of what he's going to be like in the NFL. Yeah. What have you kind of seen from him so far, if you've kind of watched him at all through the season and compared to last season, maybe?
Yeah, obviously it's leaps and bounds better than what it was last year, but you couldn't really get much worse, to be honest, last year. I think what will happen with him, hopefully this season, and which I do hope it happens with him as well, is I think that he was struggling last year. Obviously, the pass protection was horrendous, and when he was getting pressured, he was making all sort of mistakes. And I think Pedersen's just sort of broke that down, made the offensive line a lot more sturdy for him, giving him a bit more time. But I think that even just with 230 yards, 250, it's not going to break the world but what it's going to do is going to exude confidence. And when Trevor Lawrence is a confidence man, he is very, very good. Yeah. And I think that his confidence has just been broken for about 18 months, to be honest. And that's why I think you've seen that sort of Trevor Lawrence at the moment, where everyone was like, this is going to be the next quarterback since Andrew Luck to come in. He's going to break every record, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. We just haven't seen it. And I think that it's just because the footing that he got put on to start with was just absolutely atrocious. So I think that they've just basically knocked down the last 18 months, and they've rebuilt from scratch, which is starting just with foundation play. So footwork, mechanism, just getting the ball out early, reading the protections, things like that, like just fundamental stuff for QBs. And you're not going to ask him you don't want him to go and break the walls down, as Chris Jericho would say, to do all this stuff that really they got to bring it back to basics and try and breed the confidence back in him. And I think that once his confidence gets back up, I think you got a very good QB on your hands. And if I'm honest, you could even argue that they're probably one of the best teams to be in a position to win their division for a while, because the Texans don't look like they're doing it. The Titans don't look like they're doing it. And I can't even remember the other team that's in the division that's that bad.
Colts, isn't it?
Colts. They even got carousel at QB. So, if you look at this, how they're set up, obviously they've had the number one pick for about 15 years, the Jags, it seems like. But they are well set up now to own that AFC South, to be honest, because the other teams don't look like they're at the races, and they don't really know what their game plan is.
Yeah, it's a pretty poor division. It's pretty much like the AFC East, isn't it?
One win that they've had. All of their teams. There's one win from, so obviously the 8 matches.
And 2 of them played each other.
And 2 of them played each other. And that wasn't even the one win.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bad one, isn't it?
Comical.
But hopefully we can continue to add to that over the next couple of weeks, playing the Jags and the Texans. But yeah, like I say, just all about, getting to Lawrence. I think if we're going to talk about how this game's going to be won and lost, for me, it starts up front. Like, it's going to be a defensive kind of focus, I think, for me. Joey and Khalil again, isn't it? We'll probably say this quite a lot, but it's just pass rush, getting to them, bringing Derwin in, bringing out some sort of exotic looks that maybe Lawrence hasn't seen because he's still pretty inexperienced. Like I say, testing that line that they've got and just kind of getting at him, just kind of dominating up front and not allowing, and we talk about Joey and Khalil as pass rushers, but they're both excellent against the run as well. So, like I say, bottling up James Robinson, getting to Trevor Lawrence, it sounds simple, it sounds obvious. It's not a lot of insight, but that's really, for me, with potentially no Herbert or a limited Herbert and a few other injuries like we've been talking about on offense, that's where it's going to start for me. I don't know if you disagree, if you see it any differently.
No, to be honest, I think there might be quite a big game for Naz, and I think that the defensive tackle is going to be a massive key part for obviously this run game. But if you can pressure him with Khalil and Bosa, then Lawrence doesn't look like the same quarterback. So yeah, it's definitely going to be. I think we're going to have to rely on the D just because of the amount of walking wounded we've got at the moment on offense. So it's just going to be one of them ones where you're hoping that the D steps up for you, and the offense doesn't need to have to chase this game or go into the fourth having to get something, or you just want it to be not comfortable, but you want it to be it's never looking to if you see some of the games this weekend where teams were up, Raiders were up, and you're just thinking, oh my God, hopefully that never happens to us. Yeah, so like you said, being on it mentality wise and just not giving them that opportunity, and I think that being at home will help as well. I think that the home crowd should hopefully, us 4 Chargers fans will hopefully bring the roof down, as they say. So yeah, we'll hopefully that'll help us and help this D as well for giving it a bit of a hostile atmosphere for Lawrence.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it really is that, isn't it? It's just keeping them at arm's length. Get up early, keep them at arm's length. If you can extend it a little bit, maybe you can rest a few of the guys who are banged up a little bit, and you can maybe make it as easy as possible. It's probably not going to be like that. It's the Chargers, isn't it? But that's the ideal scenario, is to get 3 scores up in the third quarter. Fourth quarter, you can start kind of taking people out as you see fit, as the kind of game wears on, and you can hopefully run the clock out. But keep them at arm's length, don't give them a sniff, and like you say, just get out there with the win, really, because that's all that matters, as we said earlier.
Yeah, definitely.
So just to finish off then, a couple of things. Just give us a prediction before we move on to our Chiefs game balls to finish off.
I think that this game is going to be 27-10.
Okay, it's pretty high scoring considering all the offensive.
I think that this is going to be an Eckler game.
Okay.
So I think that he'll get 2 or 3. He might even get all of our TDs. Okay. So, and I think there'll be a couple of field goals and 2 or 3 for Eckler. If Eckler gets 2, it'd be Palmer with the other one.
Nice.
For me. And then 10 for them. I think that we hold them for a while, and then it'll probably be like an Etienne TD or something like that, maybe.
Okay. Because we all went too high last week against the Chiefs, I'm going to go really low because I think it's just going to be a grind. I'm going to go to 20-10, something like that. I'm going to potentially go for an Eckler touchdown, just a quick run or something like that, and then something short yardage red zone touchdowns like Gerald Everett or something like that. Redeem himself for not running that route properly last week, and kind of wiping that from the memory bank, hopefully. And then just the defense just kind of keeping them at arm's length the whole time, really. Maybe a touchdown in each quarter for throughout the game. With some field goals thrown in there for each side, but I don't think it's going to be super high scoring, to be honest. As long as we, like I say, keep them at arm's length, keep the scoreboard ticking over when we can do a couple of field goals here and there, just to kind of widen the gap when possible. Then I would go for that, and like I say, just get out there and look forward to playing the Texans a week later, I'd say. Yeah. All right, then. Last thing, then, just to kind of finish off the pod. Obviously, going back a little while, going back a week, but game balls for Chiefs for the Chiefs game. Who's kind of the player that kind of stood out most for you in that game?
There was two, to be honest, for me. Like we were talking about one last week. I'll go for the offensive guy because we all probably go for the defensive guy. I think it might be the same bloke, but we'll see. The offensive guy for me, we talked about him last week that he had to step up, and he, if I'm honest, he did. It was Mike Williams. I think that he did. He put in the performance that we was hoping he'd put in for against the Chiefs, and he did. The catch, that one catch was sex. Yeah. So I mean, he's. And people, I mean, there is doubts about, obviously, can he be then a wide receiver one, X, Y, and Z. But when you need to count on him, I think, Mike, I think he does produce. And I think he's going to be one of them guys for us that's going to be the big moment player. So he's going to be like, he'll be really quiet in some games in the season. You're like, what's happened to him? And then, like, when you want him to turn up, or in a big crunch match or a big key moment, Mike will turn up. And I think he did that in this game. And he was unlucky to be on the losing side, really, because he was clearly the best wide receiver on the field.
Yeah, he loves playing at Arrowhead, doesn't he? At some point, he should, not going to advocate for this, obviously, as a Chargers fan, but he should try and get a move to the Chiefs, because he would be amazing playing there every other week.
He's 35.
But yeah, no, I think, obviously, you referring to Derwin as being the other guy?
I actually wasn't, actually.
Oh, you're not?
Yeah, okay. No. Callahan was my other guy. I think he's been absolutely great last season. He's been outstanding. Like, what he did on Juju and then what he did on Renfro the week before, I think they just hadn't had a sniff. So hopefully, if he can do that against Kirk, then I'm not too worried. About the Jags. But I think Callahan's been great. He deserves like a small game ball.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, I threw in Derwin because I think, it didn't really show up on the stat sheet because he didn't get like an interception, or he didn't get like a forced fumble or a sack or anything like that. But you mentioned it before. I think he held Travis Kelce for under 60 yards. He had that incredible tackle.
Spine buster.
Yeah. And even Kelce was talking about it. And fair play, I'm not a massive Travis Kelce fan, so I just think he's a bit of a Chad. But like, to come out on his podcast with his brother and say, Derwin's like incredible player and what a tackle, and think that fair play. But I thought Derwin played really well. And
yeah, he did.
It's kind of getting obvious here, just because Mike and Derwin for our game ball.
I think it's because the bar's so high for Derwin.
Yeah.
If he doesn't reach that high bar, like, he's got to have a sack and like an interception and 24 tackles for loss. Like Derwin's been quiet and he's like the best player on the field. He's a bit quiet.
Yeah. Like, it's kind of like what I was talking about with
where everyone else's bar's like there, and you're like, oh, he's done really well, and he's like one pass deflection. It's like, oh, he's played really well today.
I guess it's kind of what I was talking about in week one with Bosa, isn't it? Like, Khalil got 3.5 sacks, Bosa got 1.5, and it's like, no one's really talking about Bosa, but he's played really well.
Yeah.
Awesome. No, but that's obviously not the game balls that we want to give out, because we want to give them out after wins, but hopefully we'll be able to do that next week. And when we come back next week after the Jags and previewing the Texans with hopefully a Texans participant, we're looking to get Ewan from the Turn It Up For What podcast on. A good buddy of mine who I've podcasted with a few times before, but that's the next week. But yeah, Ash, tell us where we can find you on social media before we get out of here.
Yeah, mine's at Tilza999s,
which you can see on the stream here, and mine is at Wakefield90, which you can see in the same place. And we are Powered by the Report, at Powered by the Report on Twitter, part of the Full 10 Yards Network. You've been listening to us preview our Jags game this weekend, and obviously look back to the Chiefs game, which we unfortunately lost in Arrowhead. You've been watching with us. So yeah, as I said, I've not really done this because we've been on YouTube now for a few weeks. I've not really said all the YouTube sort of stuff like and subscribe our videos and all that. Yeah, just go ahead and do that, because we need a few more people watching us. But thanks for watching us. And like I say, we'll be back next week. And hopefully reviewing another Chargers win to take us to